Good afternoon, friends and family of Center for Spiritual Living Ocala. I am Reverend Cindy Grimes, and I am so glad that you chose to join us this afternoon. And let me tell you a little bit about who we are, especially if this is your first time joining us. We are the Center for Spiritual Living in Ocala, Florida. We are one of many centers for spiritual living. I think it's over 350 that are located throughout the United States and the rest of the world. And this is what we value at the Center for Spiritual Living here in Ocala: spiritual growth and practice. It's the first thing in our list, is the thing that is most important to us. It's the reason that we come together at the Center for Spiritual Living, is to grow together and to participate in different spiritual practices that facilitate that growth. And our next value is love. We believe that love is where we come from. Love is what we are here to express. Love is the truth of who we are. And so it's high up on our list as well. We value appreciation. What you appreciate and give gratitude for grows in your awareness and understanding. We value community, that's coming together collectively to help one another grow and to learn and to heal. We value freedom. That's freedom of expression, freedom to be who we came here to be. We value creativity. We value health and wholeness. We value generosity and financial well-being. I went through those last ones pretty fast, but you probably know what all those things mean. And so our mission at Center for Spiritual Living Ocala is to provide spiritual tools for personal and global transformation. And our purpose is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence, meaning that we believe we come into this world already perfect, whole, and complete. And our job is to get ourselves back to that awareness and that understanding, and not just for ourselves, but to empower others to realize the truth of who we are and what we came here to be. And our vision is a world that works for everyone. That means the world works for me, it works for you, it works for your loved ones, and it works for people that we may never meet. And so that is what we are about at the Center for Spiritual Living. And I am going to bring one of our guest panelists on board today. He is going to do our prayer, our invocation, and that is Reverend Rodney Gittens. Hello, Rodney.
Greetings, hello, peace and blessings.
Greetings, greetings. Yes, Rodney hails from the One Love Spiritual Center in Brooklyn, New York. So we're down here in Florida. Rodney's in Brooklyn. We've got folks joining us from all over the place, and I'm just so thrilled to have you with us again this week, Rodney. Thank
Thank you so
you.
very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and
Yeah,
a pleasure to be. We're everywhere.
we are everywhere. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And so, Rodney, I'm going to turn it over to you, awesome prayer warrior, to pray us in and get us off to a good start.
Well, thank you very much.
All
And
right.
prayer warrior, indeed, it takes one to know one. And so I am knowing and inviting each and every one to join in this wonderful opportunity to know the truth in this prayer, this affirmative prayer, this opening prayer. And so, in joining, we are, whether your eyes are open or closed, or whether you are seated or standing, I am knowing that wherever each one of us is, the presence of God is. The presence of this beloved, infinite, indwelling presence is all that there is, and shows up wonderfully as myself and each and every one, wherever they are, in the presence of the one, allowing the presence of the one to be who and what they are. The presence of peace and love and joy and health and wealth and prosperity and all of the good, imaginable and unimaginable, all of the good that is available in abundance. That each one simply says yes to this recognition and unison in mind of this oneness, of this one power, one presence. And so I am knowing that Centers for Spiritual Living in Ocala and Reverend Cindy and all those who are in attendance and are hosting and co-hosting and on the panel, and all those who are in attendance, and contributing in the way through this wonderful medium, that each one is participating in this activity of the Most High for this greater good that is revealing the truth in greater and greater awareness. And the special focus for today, the special focus speaking about grief and grief that is shared, knowing that there is great power in this, in using this medium and in using this conversation to aid and assist ourselves individually and in communion, in community, to deal with, to overcome and go and grow through grief. And so I am knowing that everything that happens in this session is in this safe and uh, peace-filled place of love and joy and compassion, that everything that transpires is for the greater good of all, that everything that transpires is leading to the evolution and enlightenment for all those who are touched by this opportunity to know God on a greater, deeper, and higher level. And so I bless this time together. I know it is revealing the truth as this word be already being spoken into law, is already manifesting this truth in wonderful, powerful ways. For those who are here now and those who will be joining later, if there is a recording to be seen. And so I give thanks in knowing that this is already coming to fruition, and simply allow it to be the good that it is intended to be, the good that it is. And I know it is. And you can affirm with me by saying that you know it is, by saying, and so it is. Amen. Right on. And now it is. Thank you.
And so it is. Love it. And now it is.
And
Yes.
now it is, right now.
Now it is. Thank you so much, Rodney. Just love
You're
to
welcome.
hear your voice and your wisdom come through. And I'm excited to have you on in our conversation today, because we've got a lot of women, in our movement and in our panel. These our practitioners are like a lot of females, and so it's really great to have the male perspective, especially around a topic like this, such as grief. And I don't know, good, bad, and different, but I know you have some experience in this area. So good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good to be here.
Yes. And so let me bring in our other panelists this afternoon. Let's see. Karen. Oh,
Hi.
hey there.
Hello. Right on.
Hello.
Right on.
Right on.
Right
on. I love that.
That was
So we
awesome.
have Dada and Norma, our practitioners at the Center for Spiritual Living, and Corinne Dean, who is a member of our board, and my cohort in the Circle Up Center for Practical Peace Building. And so it's a lot of family here today. It's just so happy to see you all. And how wonderful that technology, and thank you for saying that in the prayer, Rodney, that technology allows us to gather in this way.
Mm-hmm.
So awesome. So our conversation, we are talking this month, and we're talking for the year on the book "See No Stranger" from Valarie Kaur, and the Revolutionary Love Project, and talking about this idea of revolutionary love for others, revolutionary love for our so-called opponents, and revolutionary love for ourselves. And so this month it's about the idea of grief as an act of love. And we started the conversation last week, just grieving kind of in general, and the ways that we have grieved and what we're grieving for, what we've been grieving over this time of COVID. And so I wanted to lay the groundwork of the idea that grief is normal and necessary and not something to bottle up. and the fact that we have not had, many of us have not had our usual ways of grieving during this time because of social distancing, that it has compounded something that's already difficult to do. So that kind of lays the groundwork for what we talked about before. What I wanted to talk about today was the idea of grieving with others, not just for others, like our own grief, but being willing to sit in the grief of other people as an act of love. And so I thank you for, for being part of this conversation, because I think, grieving on our own is so difficult already, right? Like to say, I'm going to not just feel my own grief, but I'm willing to allow your grief into my heart, is really taking that another level, don't you think?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
I agree. It
Yeah.
really does.
I know we've all had those experiences before. So I thought I'd just kind of go round robin with a couple of questions. And this may be bridging us from the conversation last week. But what kinds of things have people done for you when you were in a state of grieving that really helped you move through, better than you might have otherwise? Is there anything, can you, share? Because we're all in relationships with people who are possibly grieving and don't know what to do, right? People don't know what to do. I know somebody's hurting, but I may not know the thing to say, or I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing or whatever. So I just was wondering if you all had any ideas to share on things that have worked really well for you that other people have done.
Well, for me, I know what has helped. When people would speak with me, of course they would address the elephant in the room, but then there would be what I call conversation diversion. Something else would come up. They'd bring in something more enjoyable to talk about, just kind of lighten the conversation by totally talking about, why dwell on the fact that, okay, this person you're going through this grief. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. No, let's talk about something else. So that works for me.
So help you to have a diversion, to not have to.
Right.
Yeah, because in that case, sometimes misery don't want any company.
Yeah.
You just don't. You want to sit in your sadness and just be sad, and allow for the pain to happen. But for me, one of the most beautiful things that happened for me when I was grieving my mom in New York was that Norma and other nurses actually came up with an idea to help me with the grief. And they actually brought in a nail tech and she does facials. And in my hotel room, they snuck this woman in. She did a facial for me and did my nails, and they opened the windows, because I wanted to just lay in bed and do nothing. I was spiraling into depression, which is something I, experience from time to time. And because Norma knew that, she wanted to keep me to be able to be in the healthy grief and not allow myself to spiral. So that's how we did it. And we ended up we left the building and walked around. And even though there really was nothing open because of COVID, we still just walked around in the sunshine. And that was probably the most therapeutic thing that could have happened to me in that moment. At first, I didn't want to do it because I wanted to just sit in my depression. But, because I knew they were coming from this loving space, and a couple of the nurses who do an IV infusion therapy showed up too. And I got an infusion, of some vitamins and stuff. And they just loved on my physical form and supported me so that I could just be sad, but still have people doing stuff around me and to me, and just in a loving way. And I think tribes do that.
Wallowing was not an option.
Yeah, wallowing was not an option, And it was such a difficult thing to go through because everything inside of me wanted to be home with her when she was going through that transition. And because I couldn't be here, I was beating myself up and then going through the guilt and yada, yada, yada. Even though there was a whole pandemic that stopped me, I still took responsibility for it, that I could somehow have changed it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, diversions, kind of talking, the facial and the nails, and then or the diversionary conversation, as you called it, Norma. That helps. That's what's helped me in the past. Maybe not diverting the conversation away from the person I've lost, but diverting the sadness of the loss into the loving memories. If someone that has known the person with me, and they'll just, laughter is such a wonderful thing. And someone very close to me, when my uncle Fernando died, we call him Tio, the Spanish word for uncle. And so that was just his nickname. We all called him Tio. And so when they'd say, "Oh, you remember when Tio did this?" and we'd all just laugh. And oh my gosh, that is such a wonderful thing, because then it reminded me and each other, we would remind each other of the joy that this person brought to our lives. And then so that helps me a lot, is to laugh and remember fun stories about the person. And then for those that didn't know him, a way they would help would just ask me about him, and let me share a story and just listen. And that helps a lot too.
Nice. What about you, Rodney?
Well, I think grief is so much of a thing that is felt, and a lot of times it seems to be difficult to deal with those feelings that come up. Because a couple of times I was blindsided hearing about some friends who had made their transition, and I felt really powerless in those moments to be able to handle what was going on. It was like there was no intellectual process. It was just like almost like a shutdown, and didn't know what to do. One time, I was actually preparing for a ministerial class, and I got the word right before class started that one of my best friends had just passed away. And I was in shock, and I was overcome by grief. I didn't really get the meaning of that phrase until I felt it until afterwards. I didn't know. I couldn't say, "Oh, I'm overcome with grief." That's kind of an intellectual thing. Um, and it came rather quickly upon me, and it was actually a class that was online. I think it was before Zoom. Um, yeah, however, classmates prayed instantly, uh, which did help because it helped kind of get me centered. So at least I could kind of uh, uh, organize organize what I was going through, what I was feeling, and that helped. I remember another time I was actually at a spiritual center in New York, and right before we started, I got a call, and a good friend had passed away. This is my first time I came into this teaching, and I made it through the service, and after the service, it was like this. Um, the members, and they just kind of surrounded me. It was like it seemed like for an hour, and I shared about the person and our relationship, and but more importantly, I shared about what I was experiencing, and that helped me to get a better understanding of what I was going through and how to make a process out of it. Um, because I'm sure I think most of us are always looking for a quick solution to our pain, and the pain involved in grief is again, it can be overwhelming when it's nothing tangible. It's nothing that we can, especially when it doesn't have to be over somebody making a transition. It could be grief over any kind of sense of loss. And then what do we do? Um, as usual, um, I have I'm creating an acronym for grief.
Mm.
And so I haven't quite finished it, so maybe you guys can help me. I have G for grateful or gratefully, R for realizing, I for interdependent, E is for,
Interdependence.
I didn't get that one yet.
Oh.
Okay.
Interdependent. Empathy, emotion.
Yeah.
Oh,
Independent, interdependent,
Hmm.
and whatever E stands
You
for.
don't have the F yet either?
I had F is for forgiveness. That's what I had.
okay.
That was easy. But
Mhm.
E,
I like
Yeah,
empathetic.
definitely. Empathetic.
Empathetic forgiveness.
yeah, that'll work. Sure.
Empathetic
Absolutely.
forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And so when I have these words, it kind of resonates within me in a way that I can feel like, oh, okay, well maybe I can express this grief, because I think a lot of it issues come with not being able to express it.
Mhm.
You know, and going through something and can't even call it grief, because it's again, it can be overwhelming.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we're socialized, right? To not either that feeling our feelings is somehow bad,
Mhm.
or if I let myself feel too much, like you said, Ronnie, you're going to be overwhelmed, and then I'm
Yeah.
going to lose control, and
Mhm.
I don't know what the fear is. Then I'm going to look silly, or I don't know what. But I
Yeah.
think we carry that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. You know, it reminds me. Oh, good.
Some of it is the strength. You want to appear strong. You don't
Yeah.
want to seem as if you're weak or giving into it. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't know why anybody even said that you have to be strong. That's not even a thing. Obviously, you're in pain. You're allowed to say ouch if you're in pain, you know. But we have trained ourselves to say that that's that thing that nobody talks about. Let's just shove that under the rug. You shouldn't, especially if it's something that you were expecting, like somebody that's very ill and going through a struggle and whatever. When it finally comes to a close, if you have anything left that you've been grieving, obviously through the whole, it's like this long, lengthy process. At the
Mhm.
end, people are like, okay, it's over. So you should be over too, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Well,
And there's that fear that says, I should have known, I should have been prepared somehow. Why am I still going through this?
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's
And
I.
it's like this vulnerability as seen as a weakness, especially from the male point of view. Um, it's like I looked at it like we're I mean, specifically men or the hunter gatherer type, and we get to grunt and do all that stuff, and have that appearance of strength, and I mean, it's either play, fight, or hunt and gather. It's kind of this kind of active show of display of strength and virility, and if tears show, it's like you don't cry if you get hurt on the playing field or in war. It's just whatever concept that is about men. And so either we're playing and hunting and gathering, playing or fighting, or we're planning to. And coming together, it's like guys don't come together to be vulnerable. It's like we're gonna come together and weep. We're gonna come together and grieve. That's not part of the plan. And especially it means being vulnerable in front of somebody else.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
last week, actually, before our previous session on last Saturday, I was at a funeral. I facilitated the funeral, and at the burial ground, and most of everybody was there. And I said, "Listen, by the way, it's okay to grieve, because everybody was. It was fun. It was happy time. I'm like, but listen, you can allow yourself to grieve." And it was a mixed crowd, and I mean, I think maybe one person out of the whole funeral and at the burial, only one person cried.
Mm.
And I said, it's okay to mourn, and it's okay to grieve openly. We're here for you, because the whole idea of it, keeping it personal
Mhm.
uh, doesn't necessarily allow us or afford us the possibility of really, uh, um, like Donna was saying, like how it's not a quick fix. Just because, okay, we're leaving the cemetery, it's over, it's done. I'm good, you know. and very rarely does anything that we go through on an emotional level good just like that. You know, it's a process in coming, and it's going to be a process in going.
Yeah.
And some people say you never quite get over grieving a loss. Um, it may not have the same impact. However, and especially if we're delaying it or denying it, or what was the other word we used in the beginning?
Suppressing it.
There's a
Suppressing.
D word.
Suppressing it.
Suppress,
Denying it? No.
suppressing
I think
it.
it was a D word. But anyway, trying to cover it up for a little while.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's interesting to hear, Rodney, you give the male perspective of vulnerability, you know, how you're right, you know, the way, what is it, big boys don't cry, all that stuff that we get told in our society. And then from the female perspective too, one thing, sometimes when you're vulnerable and you're sad and you're grief, people try to fix it. So when you express your grief and you express your sadness and you show your tears, they're like, oh, you know, what can I do to make, they want to help and they want to fix it. But honestly, the best thing is just, you know, hug or just sit there in silence with me and let me cry rather than, you know, because we talk about not suppressing our grief, and I've probably done it to other people. You know, you're trying to push their grief back in because they're crying and you're like, oh, no, you know, don't be sad. Well, yes, be sad. It's okay to be sad. And so that's another thing of being vulnerable, though, is when you are vulnerable, people being loving and being human, they want to fix it for you. And you really can't. It's important to let someone grieve and show that emotion.
Yeah. And conversely, too, I mean, you have the flip side of it. You have some people who have been doing the process the entire time while that person was in hospice, or they didn't have a connection to that person that passed away. And now they feel guilty for not diving into this deep boohooing because they have already done the repair work and have already been grieving. So for them, they're at the conclusion of that. I love how Erin said, though, that the strength is not shying away from the pain of grief, but facing it head on and choosing to feel it and express it. And then you have loving people like with Susan that was talking about after the passing of Rick's mom, they were allowed to visit and just sit together as long as they wished, just to say goodbye. So there's different ways that people are supporting. But what if a person, I mean, I think it was your sister that said the other day that she was like, I don't need to cry. Everybody keeps waiting and wanting me to cry, but nothing.
That's
you
true.
know what
It doesn't look the same for everyone.
No, it doesn't look the same, but I think sometimes we do have like a denial, you know. And what I was thinking while you were talking, Rodney, I was teaching on anger and sadness, right? And the idea that there are no bad feelings. There are feelings that don't feel good, right? But we need all of them. And this was a group of middle school kids. Okay, so the oldest, they were from like 11 to 14. And this one girl in the class says, I never cry. Like, you know what? I'm just so badass. I don't ever cry. She says, I didn't even cry when my daddy died. And I was just kind of like taken aback, you know. I said, so sweetie, how old were you when your daddy died? Her father was killed, actually. I didn't even cry when my dad was killed. And I asked, how old were you when that happened? And she said, well, I think she was 11. And I said, and how old are you now? She said, I'm 11. So I was like, well, when did this happen? You know, just a few months before. And then she said, well, I didn't cry. I didn't cry, but I did try to cut my wrists, you know.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I mean, just kind of like the horror of that idea that we live in a society where there are kids, literally children, that think there's something wrong with crying, that this kid couldn't even cry over her father's death. So, you know, and I don't know that it's that she didn't need it, obviously, because she's saying like, you know, I cut my wrist. There was something there that needed to come out.
Yeah.
That if you'd asked her, she probably would have been like, no, I don't need to cry. I'm just like, all that. So, I don't know. How do you know when somebody's in denial? How do you know when they're just expressing the way they express? But I guess the next question I think I wanted to, to throw out to you all was, what does it take to be the person who sits in the pain of other people? Like, what do you need to, like, prop yourself up, to whatever, to be able to sit with other people when they're going through it? How do you prepare?
Well, for me, I know patience is one of the biggest things that you need to allow them to go through the process as they need to. Mm-hmm. But before all that, I think we as individuals need to figure out how we stand on the point of death and dying, because we can't comfort someone else if we're still going through our stuff.
Yeah.
So, we need to clear this before we can help with that.
Yeah.
I would say, just for me, I had to put my own personal stuff that I was going through on the back burner. I was going through the mom thing, and I had a nurse there in New York who lost a family member to COVID in the middle of what we were going through. And of course, I'm the lead, so she's looking to me to say, go home or stay. And I knew she wanted to stay, and she felt that guilt. And I said to her, I said, listen, in this moment, it's the way you look at it. So if you need to grieve, then you grieve. And if you need to stand strong for your family and take this opportunity, then that's what you do. Either way, the times when you are feeling like you're falling apart, you pick up the phone, you text me, doesn't matter what time or day or night. And then I'll, you send something from Pinterest. You just listen and allow for them to pour it out. And you just listen. And that's what we did, because she couldn't leave. There was that 2-week thing, and going home to her family was not an option either.
Yeah.
But it was the sitting and listening, and then making yourself available, that if in that moment they can't say it into words, or, there was another girl going through a divorce, and the pain of what was happening at home was difficult because he was trying to take the children and she was trying to make the money for the kids, so she couldn't leave. And so I said, okay, you're going through this grief. When you need to go through this part that you feel like you're breaking apart, just having that little lifeline that says, I can text somebody, and you'll get a ding back or whatever. Sometimes, Lita just said it. Sometimes words aren't necessary, or words are just hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the piece that we have to just, I know that as a nurse, when you're in the bedside and you notice somebody has depression as their pre-existing, you just have to sit and wait for them to talk. You just have to sit, and it's sometimes like molasses, the way it comes out, slow, and yeah.
And it's about them. That's how I try to prepare, to remember it's not about me in that moment. I will handle my grief at the moment. It's for that person in front of me who's grieving. I sat with a friend of mine recently who, as her mother went through hospice, and was there, at the bedside. And I knew when I was there, even though she was my friend and it was breaking my heart, the woman who was dying, I was there for her daughter. And so I would prepare myself knowing when I walked into the house, I was there for her, and listen to her, not compare it to my grief or anything like that. And just be there for her and listen and do what I can. If she wanted to cry, she could cry. If she wanted to laugh, she could laugh. It was totally her process. So that's how I would prepare.
Yeah. How did you take care of yourself after that, Corinne? What did you do after?
I would cry on the phone with you, Cindy.
Reach out.
Cindy had the good timing to call me as I was walking out of the house. It was towards the end, and I knew it would be any day. And I was leaving the house, and I got in my car, and I was like, and the phone rings, and I see it's Cindy, and I answered it, and she didn't know, she's talking, and I just blah. So I got to cry on Cindy's shoulder, over the phone.
Yeah.
So that was one way. And but afterwards I would cry. I would cry on my way home, and just and feel the joy, though, to know that I love both these women and I was honored to go through it with them. So that was one way I handled my grief, was trying to look at the joy of it, but to have someone whose shoulder you could cry on as well was really important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking about my friends and who would I invite to have this conversation. And I thought about you, Corinne. I thought about Rodney. And it was because I was in that class, Rodney, as well, when you had that experience. And we were able to just be there for you in that moment. So, and of course, I've been with Donna, and you all have been with me in mine as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm remembering a moment of my grief, and I had Rodney on one side of me, and I had Reverend Catherine Knox on the other side. And so that's just a tremendous thing for me to realize the importance of community when you're going through it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you may not want to be with people, and maybe you have to have that time to yourself, but there is that a real important role and necessity, I think, of having other people to be with you in your grief.
Mm-hmm.
I know it helps me.
Mm-hmm.
And having mentors, like, Cindy, you have been in that position for us, mentors that we can reach out and say, I'm spiraling. Now what? And if somebody doesn't have mentors, because, some people might be listening and they don't have that. They don't have a community like we do. Well, y'all need to join us.
Yeah.
But, there's also talk therapy. There's also suicide hotlines that will just listen. There are grief groups on Facebook and the internet. And, Marianne was saying you need to make the person who is feeling grief feel safe. I'm a safe space of healing, just different places. There's so many resources, but you have to be willing to allow for yourself to step out of the grief and allow for somebody else to help you carry the cross. I said that, to somebody else. I said, if Jesus Christ can put the cross down, so can you. Allow somebody else to help you carry it. Don't just think, I'm locked in this grief. You didn't know my mom, or you didn't know my dad, or you didn't know my friend. We had a friend recently that we just found out they found his body in Puerto Rico. I'm like, what? So there's that little ping of, whoa, what is happening? But then who do you reach out to? For me, I laid back on the community. I stepped into Pinterest. Is awesome because they have some great sayings that you can just download and have a little picture and a way to, honor and step into that without falling into the depression of it.
Yeah. So sometimes we're on the receiving end, like being willing to receive the love, right? Letting somebody love on you when you're in pain. And sometimes you're the one that's giving it.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're the presence for the other person. So, we stay open. Open, yeah. I'm looking to see what other comments we have here. That sometimes words are not necessary, or sometimes words are hard, and sometimes, silence is the best thing.
Yeah.
To just leave the space, right? For people to come when they're ready.
Yeah.
To open up. Let's see who
The
else.
safe space that they can save non-judgmental. Because sometimes it comes in anger, man. A parent or somebody passed away and the resolution did not happen for them with that person. And they're pissed off because that person did some crappy stuff to them. And be okay with them being pissed off.
Right, because the grief may not be a loss or a death. It could be a betrayal, like Wada talked about last week.
Yeah.
Right. So just creating the safe space. I think for me, it's knowing or feeling like there's a safe space for me to move through. Like my friends, their love, creates this container for me to go in there and cry and scream or do whatever it is I need to do, and then just be done with it. Right. And move through.
It's true. And for them to not be too horrified if you start throwing things, because sometimes that's what you do. Not that I've ever done that, right?
However it comes out.
However it comes out.
Let it
It's
come
all
out
good.
in a non-judgmental way.
Exactly.
And that's it.
But I think it's also important to for the individual experiencing the grief to get that understanding, to be able to receive that assistance, like whether it's guilt or shame, like some things were mentioned here, like, oh, I wasn't there for, to make a difference maybe, or whatever it is, for the person to reach out, they have to have a healthy understanding to some degree of what grief is so that they can plug themselves into a group without necessarily feeling threatened or feeling like they're the only vulnerable ones, because everybody in the group is going through vulnerability. So one of the things I think for us to remember is that on some level there needs to be some kind of intellectual understanding. Like this, I mean, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just to know that it is natural and normal, and to go through grief. And I remember somebody saying years ago, there are no new emotions or feelings. Everything has already been experienced. So what we're going through is we're not unique. We're not the only ones. And however, when we're going through it, it sure feels like it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the importance of a community, of a group that can embrace somebody in a totally non-judgmental, supportive way.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, it looks like we are at time, and
Already?
I
Wow.
know it's so fast. It goes so fast. So maybe just closing, if anyone wants to say something before as we close out, your statement on this grieving with others.
I want to say something that
Mhm.
your presence is enough. You don't need
Yeah.
to be a professional. You don't have to be some, elaborate whatever. Just the fact that you're a human being that's sitting in unconditional love is enough.
Mm.
That was very similar to what when she said presence, I was like, because I was thinking be present.
Yeah.
We have to be present if we're going to be that strength for someone else.
Right. Yeah, just let them know you're grieving, but you're not grieving alone. I'm here with you, just sitting here with you.
Mm. Beautiful. Reverend Rodney, last words of wisdom?
Well, if it's presented to you, then you're it.
Mm.
Somebody comes into your world grieving, it's before you, and just be there for that person.
Mm.
Not
Thank
an
you.
accident.
Yeah.
Right.
That means that everything that person needs at that moment is within you.
Ah, beautiful.
That's great. Mhm.
Yes. Thank you, my loves. You're all so awesome. Now, Donna and Norma are participating actually in a workshop this weekend. We're so excited for you.
Yes.
Ringer,
To do some sound healing with Shanda. So she
Yes.
just arrived for us to do our check.
Fabulous. Well, I love you and enjoy your workshop. And thank you, Reverend Rodney, for joining us from Brooklyn. And thank you, Corinne. And we will see you all next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to close this out with some prayer. So thank you so much. Love you all. And see you. Actually, we have our Zoom for whoever can make it. I know Donna and Norma can't. Reverend Rodney, maybe Corinne.
Yes, I
Now we'll
believe
be
so.
on to connect, take your prayer requests, and so on and so forth. So love you all.
Love you too. Yeah.
Blessings. All right. Another great talk. We could have gone on for probably another hour. We'll wrap up our conversations around grief next week, taking it to the next level. And it's now time for us to share our gifts and tithes. The Center for Spiritual Living, we have a building. We are looking forward to meeting again in person in the near future. And, we have some expenses and some things that have come up, and we're just really very, very grateful and very much in need, to be frank with you, of your donations, not just of your time and talent, but also of your financial treasure. So there is a little ticker tape going across the bottom of the screen there. That is a way that you can give to Center for Spiritual Living Ocala. What you do is send a text to that phone number from your phone, And you just put in the amount that you would like to send to the center, and it goes right from your account to ours. So you have to set it up first, but that is a very easy way, or you can go on PayPal. And so let me bring up the, let's see what else we've got here. Our prayer, our affirmation. And so I invite you to make this affirmation yours. We know that we receive as we give, that in order to get that ball rolling, you have to put it in motion. So if it's friendship that you desire, be a friend. If it's money that you're needing, then plant that seed of giving money. And what you plant comes back to you, pressed down and multiplied. And so this is an affirmation. I invite you to make it your own. It is the nature of life to give of itself. As it is the tree's nature to bear fruit and the flower's nature to bloom, it is my nature to share the gifts of my time, talent, and treasure. I participate in the divine flow of life, giving generously and receiving abundantly. I am blessed and I am a blessing. I am grateful. And so I know that each and every one of you is a blessing. Certainly you're a blessing in my world. And I'm grateful to be the spiritual director of this beautiful community. Let us see what else we've got here. I think I'm going to close this out with our prayer for protection. Let me see if there are any other conversations that need to be here. We've got our Zoom link that's up there. It is, we meet on Zoom after this broadcast live. It's not recorded, so it's for people to come and share their prayer requests and just to further the conversation. If anyone has some issues around grieving or would like to just discuss it further, or maybe going through some challenge yourself, that we would be glad to chat with you on Zoom after this. And so with all that said, we will go to our prayer for protection, which comes from, it's a prayer by James Dillett Freeman. And it is, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Everywhere you are is holy ground, because you are the living expression of Spirit itself. And so I just pray and affirm that this week is wonderful, that any obstacles you may be going through turn into stepping stones to your greater yet to be. And I look forward to seeing you on Zoom or at next week's broadcast. Love and blessings to each one of you.